Welcome to Dear Texas Radio, where we encourage Texans to drop everything and read. Your hostess for today's show is Denise Bryson.
Hello. Welcome, everyone, to Dear Texas, to the Dear Texas Radio Show, where we encourage all of Texas to drop everything and read. Today, I am excited to be interviewing the writer L.M. Mann. That's what she goes under when she writes her books, but her name is Lydia. And so we're so excited to talk to her, and she is the author of The Nightmare King. How are you doing today, Lydia?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Denise.
I was excited to read. I was reading the chapters in the book, and I was just so excited about it. I said, this is going to be a fun interview. This will be a lot of fun. And so I was just wanting to, now where are you from? Give us a little background about you.
Okay, well, I'm from the Dallas area. I actually live in Plano now, but I grew up around here, so I'm a native Texan. I think I put on my website, I love barbecue, and I can ride, rope, and shoot with the best of them.
I got tickled about that. I said, oh, my gosh, she's a Texan.
But, I went to Berkner High School in Richardson, and I have 2 degrees from the University of North Texas, both in radio, TV, film, which is now, I think they call it media arts because, we're expanding.
Now tell us a little bit about your career. You've been doing that for over 30 years, so could you tell us a little bit about that and even how that fits into your writing?
Yes, ma'am. I started with this company called Camp TV back in 1988. I was only 3 at the time. I was a very talented toddler, young, talented. No, and Camp TV actually makes videos for summer camps, and so for almost 30 years, I have worked with summer camps throughout the United States, helping to tell their stories on video, which I think that's where my creative energy, sort of found its outlet for a while. I love working with camp directors and school teachers because they're like the nicest people on the planet.
They are.
And the other thing is I get to just be a big kid most of the time. And, if the camps I work with ever quit sending me camp T-shirts, I'm not going to have anything to wear. There's nothing going to be in my closet.
That seems like it's a lot of fun, and it's such an enjoyable job. I said it's wonderful to find something that you're passionate about, you enjoy doing, and that you have done it for that long, and you still have that same vibrant thought and speech about it. So that's what's really awesome about it. Those are the kind of jobs you want to have. Now tell us something about The Nightmare King. Let's talk about that and all in that book and how you kind of started writing that book. I know I read that you were writing it for your niece and nephew actually, and so kind of guide us through how that process came about.
Well, when I went to grad school in the mid '90s. Part of the reason I went back to school was, I wanted to see if I could write. I had been I'd written short stories and things like that, all my life off and on, but, I really hadn't taken it seriously, So when I went to grad school, that was my goal. And so I took a lot of creative writing classes and screenwriting and all of that. And my niece and nephew were actually young at the time. They were, I think 5 and 7 at the time. And, I'm a big believer in fiction can teach us life lessons in a way that's palatable. One of my favorite writers is C.S. Lewis, the Chronicles of Narnia. And you think about the life lessons that are in those books. And so I kind of started a short story for, my niece and nephew. I just kind of wanted to be able to communicate to them, without it like, now y'all sit down, we're going to talk about, overcoming your fears. It was, I wanted to write this story, and, and they, of course, they were the stars of the story at the time. Just to talk about, there's those times in life where you do the hard thing because it's the right thing to do, and you know, you are smarter than you think you are, and you can overcome your fears. And so I started writing, and it just kept coming, and I was like, what? I think this is turning into a book. And so I've never written a book before. Hey, and so you know, I wrote this draft, and you know, I read it to my niece and nephew, and I was like, okay, I've accomplished my goal, and I just set it on the shelf. And then I started my video career.
Again, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. Exactly. Those characters would, you know, kept coming back in my head, and I was like, you know, and at about the same time, my younger sister published her first couple of books, you know, and this was in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, and so, you know, I was like, you know, well, have you read The Nightmare King? Read this. See, what do you think? You know, and she finally just kicked me in the rear end and said, you have got to rewrite this, get it really, you know, in a publishable state, and publish it. And so, thanks to my sister, let me plug her website, cjpetersonwrites.com. She, you know, she got me going, and so, you know, this the full title of my book is The Nightmare King: Shadow of Dragons 1, and yes, there'll be a 2 and a 3, and possibly a 0, because after I wrote The Nightmare King, I was like, you know what? There's sort of some backstory we could tell in this too. So, you know, we'll see. As you know, if you're a writer, Denise, you know that characters
just talking.
Kind of, they keep talking, and you're like, okay. And sometimes you write stuff and you go, oh, okay, that's complete poo. And then you write stuff sometimes and you're like, where is this coming from? This is awesome.
I know. It's because they just keep talking. They just keep talking to you. You thinking, okay, I'm going to tell you a story. I'll tell the story. That's what you want to say.
Yep. And one of the things that when I was in grad school, I did take some screenwriting classes because I was a radio, TV, film major. And I think learning the structure of screenwriting, it kind of has helped me in organizing, at least with my plots and stuff. So, you know, I would say if there's a writer out there and you're kind of like, I just can't quite get it right, you know, take a quick look at, you know, some screenwriting books. You know, it's helpful. You know, those plot points and all that stuff.
So do you ever think that you might get to make this into like a movie or something like that, since you do video and film? Have you thought about that from that perspective?
From your lips to God's ears. Steven Spielberg, call me. Call me.
Well, I hope it comes about, because this is an interesting story. And so could you tell us something about Andy and is it Leah? Is that how you pronounce it, or is it Leah?
Andy and Lee.
And Lee. And then, of course, them trying to rescue Maggie, and then Shadow. Can we hear something about it?
Well, I'll just go ahead and, you know, let the big secret out. Andy and Lee, Andrew and Lee just happen to be the middle names of my niece and nephew, who are now grown.
That is awesome.
But you know, the story starts with, you know, this big black dragon showing up in their backyard. His name is Shadow. Well, he just happens to be a good friend of their aunt, Maggie, and Maggie's in trouble. And so they set out with the Shadow to go to the Land of Dreams to rescue her from the dungeon of the Nightmare King. And it's a journey. Along the way, they have to pass the test of wisdom and the test of courage. You know, they have to collect these, I called them seals in the book. They're sort of like a medallion that actually act to help them get into the Nightmare King's castle, and I'm not going to give away any more plots. So.
And then what about the sword? I was interested in that sword.
The sword. Yes. You know, I'm such a sci-fi and fantasy geek. I own it, and that's just such a classical symbolism of that comes with fantasy, and so the sword of light, comes to play when the big battle with the Nightmare King, goes down. So cue the music,
Mhm.
Mhm.
So how did Maggie get in trouble? I just want to know a little bit about that, and then in a minute we're going to go talk to let our sponsors talk to us. But
all right.
Poor Maggie.
Well, the Nightmare King stages an accident where he can come into our world and snatch her out.
Oh.
And so, yeah. So that's all revealed in the book.
That sounds awesome. So we're going to come back in a little bit. We're going to take a break, and we're going to hear from our wonderful sponsors, and then we will be right back on Dear Texas Radio.
Dear Texas would like to thank our sponsors.
Are you looking for a book festival in your area? Check out the Book Festival Network, where you can find local Texas book festivals, plus information about the attending authors, their books, and even videos. The website is easy to remember. It's bookfestival.network. Don't forget to spell out network. Again, that's bookfestival.network, your home for Texas book festivals and Texas authors. Read, connect, and discover. We have it all at Wimberley Village Library. We support our community by providing high-quality books in all formats. We have programs for all ages and many services to fill your needs. Check us out online at WimberleyLibrary.org.
Bourgeois Media and Consulting, a book publishing consultant where creative inspiration is realized. More at bourgeoismedia.com. EBG 247, where you can find ebooks galore 24 hours, 7 days a week at ebg247.com. Lone Star Book Festival is an exciting book festival to discover indie authors and publishers. To learn more about the award-winning authors, events, and other exciting events happening during the Lone Star Book Festival, please visit our website at lonestarbookfest.com. The third annual short story contest begins March 1st and runs through July 31st. Enter your short story for a chance at prizes and getting published. To learn more about this annual event, please visit our website at txshorts.com. McKinney, Texas's quaint downtown square, rich in history, entices visitors to discover its more than 100 eclectic shops and eateries. With origins dating back to 1848, McKinney is situated just 30 miles north of Dallas and 40 miles south of the Oklahoma border. One of the country's fastest-growing cities, McKinney maintains its authentic small-town atmosphere, which is palpable when exploring the downtown streets, taking a walk on one of the city's many nature trails, or even visiting the city's Croatian-style village. Learn more about what awaits you in this picturesque North Texas city at www.visitmckinney.com or call 888-649-8499.
Critics say that Joe Kilgore's A Farmhouse in the Rain has an almost Shakespearean feel and appeals to the human spirit on every level. You can pick up a copy of Joe Kilgore's Farmhouse in the Rain as an ebook or as paperback. You can find it at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or at books.txauthors.com. Don't forget to get your copy of Joe Kilgore's A Farmhouse in the Rain.
Welcome to Dear Texas Radio, where we encourage Texans to drop everything and read. Your hostess for today's show is Denise Bryson.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to Dear Texas Radio. We have been interviewing the author L.M. Mann, and we're calling her Lydia because that's her name. And we've been talking about her wonderful books, The Nightmare King, and the different characters in the book, Andy and Lee and Maggie and Shadow, and we've been talking about them. Now, what is your source of inspiration? What kind of inspires you to write and to do things like that? What are one of your sources of inspiration? Is it music, or like you said, movies maybe, or what would you say that would be?
You know, I've always been a reader. I mean, I was one of those kids that I was the third in line, and my mom was was a retired teacher now, and so I learned to read when I was in kindergarten, and so it's like I've always just loved stories. And I've read, widely everything from, Nathaniel Hawthorne to Larry Carrera. My latest discovery was Taylor Anderson. He's a Texas writer as well. He's got a series called Destroyer Men that I'm right in the middle of, and I'm loving every minute of it. And so just being a devourer of stories is, I think just it's just ingrained in me, I think. And then the other thing is, I do love working with kids. I think at heart I may be a frustrated school teacher. I just don't know. And so, I love to do school visits, and I love to get kids excited about using their imagination. Okay, pardon me for getting on my soapbox for just a second, but we test the snot out of kids, and it's like, if you don't fit in this little box, then apparently you're not intelligent or something. And we all know that all of us have different ways of learning and different ways of expressing. And so while it is important that we learn to check off the boxes, we need to learn how to do that, but thinking outside the box, using the imagination, it's so important whether, a kid is, a math kid or a science kid or an artsy kid or a sporty kid or whatever. It's imagination that drives creativity.
Exactly.
And when I get in front of a bunch of kids, and, we talk about that and how that, Einstein, he had to use his imagination to come up with the theory of relativity. Yeah, that's where he said that.
And you talked to them about their right and left brain, too. I thought that was interesting, too, and how you talk to the children about that when you visit the classrooms and things like that.
Yeah, and it's very interesting. I don't know, I haven't done a ton of research on it, but I've done enough. I Googled it once. No, I have done a little bit of research, and how that, one part of our, one half of our brain is more the creative music side, and the other side is the more, mathematical and logical and all of that, and I try to talk to the kids about, there's kind of two different stages of writing. There's the beginning stage of the what if part of the creative process, and how that when you're in that first creative flow, that you don't edit stuff. You don't worry about, did you spell it right,
Right. It's down.
You can just get it down. And I'm a big believer in hand writing my first draft. I know some people do, some people don't. For me, it works because there's something about having that pen in my hand that helps the creative part of me go. But then you've got to switch. Once you got that first draft out, that's when you turn the other side of your brain on and go, okay, now you can edit now. Now's your time.
That's true.
and it's funny, but I'll tell the kids, I'm like, there's times that little editor in your head wants to hop up and start editing, and you have to say, no, shush, go sit in the corner. It's not your turn yet.
That is so true. Oh my goodness, that is so true. Now tell us about those kids you have at home.
The kids I have at home are pets.
Oh no.
Yes, I've got 4 cats and 2 dogs, and they're all rescues, and I work for them. I understand that, my purpose into life is to, basically let them sleep on me and, feed them and, do whatever they want me to do. So, I never had, as much as I love kids, I never had kids of my own. So that's kind of where I guess I get my little, family parenting thing going there. And then I also look after, my parents. They're in their mid-80s, and that's, I'm so blessed to still have them in my life. And so even though there's, it sometimes can be work, it's also just a joy because, so many of my friends and contemporaries have lost their parents already. And so I feel just like doubly blessed. So
that is a blessing. Believe me, that is a blessing. And just for you to be able to have a hand in taking care of them, it's almost like you flip the script. I have a book that's coming out. I'm telling my story. I had that story at a young age. I had to take care of my mother, and so I'm writing something. It's called Opposite Roads, and so I'm working on that. And so anyway, but I'm telling it from a fictional perspective. But anyway, I also wanted to talk to you about. I wanted to ask you something about. Or do you ever feel like you might write some pet books? Some things like, some stories, some creative stories would come out, children's books about pets and things like that.
Oh, yes.
Hearing those voices.
Yes. In fact, I've written a book for, like, beginning readers about two magical cats. And one of my good friends is my illustrator on that. So she's actually got the story, and we've been, for months we've been bouncing, different art styles back and forth, and just trying to, because I can't draw to save my life. Okay, I can draw a palm tree, and I can draw a horse head because I was a horse kid, like totally passionate about horses. When I was a young girl. In fact, I almost got in trouble in 5th grade reading because I wouldn't read books that didn't have horses in them. That's kind of a long story. So yes, I've got some horse stories in my head and some summer camp stories in my head that would be for sort of middle grade to young adult. And then I've got some of these other, sort of illustrated young reader books in mind too. But I've got to, get my friend to finish the illustration so that we can go ahead and get that published.
Yes. Now, what about the sequel to Nightmare, The Nightmare King? What's coming up next?
Yeah, the sequel to The Nightmare King will actually will take place in the life of Andy and Lee when they're sort of late high school, early college age. And let's just say the Nightmare King figures out a way to come back into the picture. And this time he and his minions are not going to be stuck in the land of dreams. They're gonna somehow figure out a way to come into our world.
Oh wow.
Oh yeah. So I've got several things going on that, and then I'd mentioned that there may be a book 0, because once I started writing the first book, then I was like, well, okay, I need to tell the story of really how Shadow and Maggie met when they were younger, and why that's important, and their conflicts with the Nightmare King. And so, I've got about half of that, already in a notebook. So, when I juggle a lot of balls in the air in life, and so, like everybody else. But yeah, that whole carving out time to write can be a challenge.
It can be a challenge. You just almost have to say, this is when I'm going to do it, and do that every time, and just and pray the characters meet you there when you get there, when you sit down and let them go for it. Now, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I know your books, because time is winding down, so I don't want to make sure that books can be found on TexasAuthors.com. Will you start telling us a little bit about where you can be found and where you are on social media and on the internet and all of that? Let's talk about that.
Well, you can find my website at Mann, MANN, rights.com. That's mannrights.com. And you can find me on Facebook under Man Rights. You can find me on Twitter on Man Rights. And then you can find me on Instagram as Man Rights Dragons.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And And if you want to see a lot of pictures of my pets, then you'll follow me on Instagram. They'll show up.
They will show up. Yes.
I have learned the power of Catterday. I don't know if you know about Catterday, but that's when you post a picture of your cat. You post a picture of your cat on Saturday. So.
Oh wow! Okay, I didn't know that. So it's Catterday. That's so cute.
It's Catterday, and people pay attention to that. So it's like you can always just tag your website in there too.
And then what about the marketing event? I know you'll be at the marketing event that's coming up with Texas authors, and so we look forward to you being there as one of the authors that'll be there, but also just enjoying the event, because the thing about it is marketing is very key when it comes to being a writer and knowing how to market your book and getting it out there that your book is available. And so that's really important. It's so awesome that Texas authors is doing seminars and things based upon that to help writers to even have more exposure, help us get more exposure and things like that. So we thank Alan for doing that. But so we want everybody to come out and visit. We'll have the Lone Star Texas Festival coming up. So there's a lot of good things coming up where you can meet all of our wonderful Texas authors. And I have enjoyed talking to Lydia today, L.M. Mann, and she is the author of The Nightmare King and Shadow of Dragons 1, and we look forward to her sequel. She got a couple of sequels that are going to be coming out. We look forward to that, and then we look forward to that book about the pets. We're going to look forward to that as well, because those are going to be some good things. And just her joy for kids, so I know it's going to be awesome, and it'll be good for you to read. But I want you to get The Nightmare King. It's a good book, and you should read it and hear all the wonderful things that are going on and in the stories and in the storyline, and hear what happens to Maggie and what happens to Andy and Lee and Shadow and all her characters that are in the book. And I think what it was Sir
Isaac, yes. Sir Isaac of the Golden Eagle, yes.
Yes, you want to know about what happens with Sir Isaac and everybody. So just make sure you go out and purchase it and look for her online. She can be purchased at texasauthors.com. And so we look forward to thank you so much for being on our show today, and we are glad to talk to you, and we look forward to seeing you and reading more about your books, and look forward to that sequel coming out. This has been Dear Texas Radio, and we thank you, and we encourage you always to drop everything and read. Thank you so much, Lydia.
Thanks, Denise.
Thank you for listening to Dear Texas Radio. To learn more about Dear Texas and its literacy programs, please visit their website at deartexas.info. I'm Alex Anthony, your announcer.